This is Francesco Abbruzzino with the Uncensored Report. And today I want to talk a little bit about Rule 41. This is a vital Supreme Court order that's set to go into place in effect today, and it's going to dramatically expand the surveillance powers of federal agencies. It's called Rule 41. It softens the legal requirements for obtaining search and seizure warrants that grant the government remote access into the individual computers, and yes, phones. And perhaps that's why my wife's phone is messing up. In the past, law enforcement was required to go in, obtain a warrant from some judge within their jurisdiction there, where they proposed to do a search, and that's basically was the process. But now with this new system, an individual is using technology essentially to conceal their location, through Tor and other sites. The warrant considers valid regardless of the jurisdiction, so that officers can go into these sites. And a single authorization will have the potential to validate millions of searches into private devices because of this issue. And these changes have been on the fast track since the FBI has evidence thrown out in a recent case. It was involving pornography. And the defendant was using the Tor network. If you don't know, Tor network is basically where Silk Road was. It's basically a browser you can go in and be anonymous, and they can't really track you. So he was out there, was using this, and his IP address out there operating as a child pornographer. And the site was known as Playpen. Now, Tor is a good resource, but in cases like this, it's horrible. And so where do you find the middle ground? You want officers and our law enforcement to be able to go after idiots like this guy, but you don't want to violate your rights. And that's the quagmire we're in. So the Department of Justice, the FBI, they refuse to disclose the legal process used to gain access to their evidence. And more likely, they refuse to because they didn't follow the legal protocols. And this happened in Silk Road, too. We still don't know how they gained access into there and got all the information on that individual. But back to this Playpen case, because they wouldn't reveal that information, this judge rejected it and threw it out of court. And the issues compounded because the FBI used Playpen servers to set up this massive sting. And they were basically operating as pedophiles under Operation Pacifier. And the pedophilic porn site was ran directly by federal agents over about 2 weeks. And this was, it was a good attempt to try to get these idiots that are out there doing this child pornography. So I get what they were trying to achieve. But this dark web, places like Tor, they feel the government that they've been subverting the controllable marketplace for years. That's how the government sees it. And anything outside their control is deemed to them essentially insurrection, without a doubt. Anonymity online creates this double-edged sword, like I've been saying. It's your freedoms versus some people that use it in lawless ways, like that Playpen. And modification to Rule 41 has it's been framed as a crucial element in preventing crime, even though implementing it grants sweeping authority to states, to agents. And typically any changes like these have broad implications, so they're brought before Congress where it's debated. They have discussions on it, and the discussion instead in this case was brought to the U.S. Courts Advisory Committee. And following the Department of Justice request to modify the rule, the alteration to the rule was approved by the Supreme Court. So they followed a different track. There was a lack of publicity on it. It was a lack of publicity due to major media not really covering it. And it fundamentally shows there's been a deliberate effort to conceal the consequences of the scheme of Rule 41 and some of the alterations that they have made. And, the media, too, they've made an excellent job of demonizing the dark web, sites like Tor. By focusing on stories like Silk Road. And if you don't know, Silk Road was the selling of drugs through the Tor network. And media has been convinced that if the public has anonymity and criminality are the same, that they're one and the same. If someone wants to be anonymous on the net, they're criminals. For some reason, the media is just sticking with that narrative and putting it out there to the public. Again, propagandizing so that they achieve what they want to, their objective. Maintaining complete privacy does not matter to those whose biggest worry is having their porn history made public, folks. But it's the Underground Railroad that these renegades are working against the establishment. A lot of journalists, they go on tour. They communicate with sources and establish an outlet for whistleblowers. And you'll see Tor is used by a lot of people that want to be anonymous, and they contact journalists nationally, even locally, and also by whistleblowers because they know someone can't come after them. Activists, social media, they're all out there because they want to put out dissenting opinions, but they're afraid that if they say something, that some kind of harm or injustice will come upon them. And there's been multiple bipartisan actions out there to try to curtail our privacy, all in the name of our safety, all in the name of the public good. You know, through the Stop Mass Hacking Act and the Rule Act, those have really deteriorated our privacy. Yeah, many of you have probably never heard of it. You probably never heard of Rule 41. You probably never even heard of the Tor network. Limiting these kinds of limitations on power is what this essentially over time will lead to a subjugation of society. And it takes a huge step towards neutralizing the Fourth Amendment. If you think about it, the Bill of Rights, making probable cause on an individual basis a thing of the past. Who needs that anymore? Just like when the asset forfeiture, they'll take your money. No due process there. The desire for privacy cannot be considered suspicious in this world where we live, folks, where almost all personal information is a matter of public record. It still cracks me up when I hear people say, I did this during the election. I had my camera out there, and they're like, you can't take my picture on public. Yeah, I can. But what do you need to do? You may not be able to do anything about this, but on different issues, you need to stay aware. Don't just, don't be like that one lady that comes on and is a troll and says, oh, RT, oh, freedom thought. And she only wants me to get news from NBC, CBS, ABC. If you guys haven't realized it now, they're weaponized propaganda for the government. In this case, for the progressives when it was in the election process. And you got to go through other sources. Sure, RT may be weaponized propaganda for the Russians, but you got to get all these sources and together come out with the information. You got to contact your legislators. To you it may seem futile to contact them, but making their lives difficult is the best way to get their attention. I can tell you, locally I follow on the different email servers in Sarasota County. And I can't tell you how many times it's one person that writes 5, 6, 7 times. He starts to irritate the lawmaker, the legislator, the political council member, and they enact changes because of that one person. And to get them off their back. And if you're passionate enough in preserving individual freedom, there will be nobody left to look at the constant progression of this invasive system unless we find more people that are passionate. And that's the problem. There aren't enough people out there that are passionate. And so we continue to lose our privacy. So you can see on the screen they're covering the Rule 41. This has been Frankie. What say you? The Uncensored Report.